Very pleased to have Lynne McTaggart here with her new book, The Bond, published by Hay House, which is an excellent publisher, which we love. So yeah, she's just going to talk very casually about the book, and then if you happen to want to ask any questions, you're very welcome to do it. It will be on our YouTube channel, but you're very welcome to ask questions as well. And then afterwards, if you want to talk to her one-on-one, she's going to be signing books over there. So you can also speak with her casually after the talk. So without any further ado, let's welcome Lynne and thank her for coming today.
Thank you for listening. I wrote this book, The Bond, really to try to work out why we're in such crisis. Because at the moment, all we're hearing from every quarter is that we have a problem. We've got an ecological crisis, we've got financial crisis, we've got foreign debt crisis, we've got just about every kind of crisis. And we've got pundits from every area trying to tell us why. And they're saying things like, it's the end of capitalism as we know it. It's the end of our dependence on foreign oil. It's the end of food because it's the end of oil. And with us embarking on 2012, if you take stock in the Mayan long count calendar, it's about to be the beginning of the end of the world. But I have another take on this. I believe that it is the end of something, but not any of those things. It's the end of a false sense of who we are. And in that ending, it's going to be the only path to a viable future. I'll tell you a story about how this book came about. I have two daughters. I'm married with two children. And one of my daughters is very talented in acting. And she was chosen as the main role in her school play. All of a sudden I learned that she'd been shunted to a more minor role. I could never find out the reason for it until one of her friends let slip that another girl had lied to a new director in order to take over the part given to my daughter. And this girl, by the way, was my daughter's best friend. So I was alarmed by this. I was aghast. And when I went to talk to her mother about it and bring it up tactfully, she turned to me and said, well, she shrugged her shoulders and she said, well, that's life. And I was again aghast at that. But when I started to think about it, I thought to myself, well, yeah, that is the life we adults have created for ourselves. We have competition as the central engine of our lives in every area. We have competition as the engine of our educational model. It's the engine of our financial model, our business model. Our relationships are in the main very adversarial. And even our neighborhoods. God forbid your neighbor gets a Mercedes when you're still driving a Volvo. So there's been a sentence running through my head as though it were surgically implanted there ever since. Does it have to be this way? Was it supposed to be this way? Were we designed and hardwired for competition? And if not, what are we supposed to be? As you know, I study science and I write about modern and cutting-edge science. Besides physics, this time I looked at biology, psychology, anthropology, sociology, all the ologies, to see what they said about this, and resoundingly the answer was no. We were never meant to be this way. We were meant not to compete, but to share, care, and be fair. It's hardwired into us. Nevertheless, what we've created in all of our societal structures is against nature, and that is why we're in the mess we're in. Many things write the story we live by. Religion, philosophy, all sorts of things. But science writes the biggest part of that story. And our scientific story, up until now, has described the universe as a load of individual things. This came about in the scientific revolution with Isaac Newton, who described a very well-behaved, clockwork-like universe filled with separate and self-contained and well-behaved things. Then all of a sudden Darwin came along with his theories about survival of the fittest. He never actually coined the term, but he was very, very influenced by population explosion. and believed, as a consequence, there isn't enough to go around, so life must proceed through struggle. That's how life evolves. And one of his friends came up with the survival of the fittest mantra, and that indeed became the mantra of the universe. It's hard to underestimate really overestimate the effect of Darwinism, because Darwin was the J.K. Rowling of his day. His books sold out before they even hit the bookshops. Because of mass printing, they swept the globe and they became justification for all kinds of burgeoning philosophies like capitalism, the Adam Smith model. We do best as society for looking out for number one, by looking out for number one. And that's become our mantra, the central mantra of our lives. But was it supposed to be like this? The answer is no. Nature has designed us in every way with a bond. If you look at subatomic particles, the smallest so-called thing in the universe, you don't find a thing at all. A subatomic particle is a little poof, a vibratory nothingness. And it's trading energy all the time with other subatomic particles. So that the unit of the universe is not a thing at all, it's a relationship. And that's mimicked in every way in our biology and its connection with the environment, with our relationships with other people, in even all of our societal structures. Even with those people we cannot stand, there is a bond, a connection so integral and profound that it's impossible to say where one thing ends and another thing begins. And I found that basic recipe in every area of our lives. As I say, biology, we're affected so much by our environment that is what plays our genes. Our genes are like the keys of a piano. They only get turned on or not by the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the friends we have, the sum total of our lives. That determines what plays our genes. What I'm saying, basically, is we don't get created from our genes outward, from inside out. We get created from outside in. Same thing with our thoughts. Scientists have now found that we have copycat neurons in our brains, mirror neurons, so that when we see someone have an action or a thought, the very same neuron in us fires as if we were performing the action, we had the emotion. So our thoughts are a complex mix of ours and everyone else's with whom we come into contact. We are so interconnected and interwoven in our world, it's impossible to think of us as anything but an intergalactic superorganism. And we see that also in our social relations. We have an "it's not fair" button in our brain that rings if we have too much or we're given too little. We have hardwiring in our brain that makes us want to give. It feels as good to give as to eat or have sex. We need belonging above all else. So suicides kill themselves for one reason only: excessive individuation. They feel left out. And being left out is the one thing that we human beings cannot bear. We are connected. The problem is, we're right now in a situation where no one is connected anymore. We are marching more and more to what I call atomization, where we're ring-fencing things more and more according to our differences. We're at our most unfair in history, even though we need fairness and connection and belonging above and giving above everything else. Right now, our society is at its most unfair, and scientific studies show when that is the case, everybody loses, rich or poor. We're at a game now no one wants to play. So the real reason I wrote The Bond was not simply to rewrite the scientific story of who you are, but also to provide a blueprint of what we need to do to recover the bond, to recover wholeness, and indeed to recover life, because we're on the precipice of extinction. I looked at 4 major areas. I looked at our need to see much more holistically, our need to relate differently, so it's not just what's in it for me, but how can I serve? and how am I connected, and putting the relationship first. I looked at ways to recover our community, because that is what's breaking down, and how to create that connection even across great divides and polarities by looking to larger goals. And finally, I looked at changing our purpose so that each of us in tiny ways can be giant game changers to change what's going on now. All of us are terrified by what we see in the newspapers. And we keep waiting for the big guys in charge to fix things for us. And we're going to have to wait for a very long time, it looks like, because they have a hard time even speaking to each other. Here's what I discovered that's so amazing. In a culture of greed, the scientists have found through modeling, all it takes are one or two little game changers who are wedded to fairness to change a whole atmosphere. I give you the story of Marie. Marie was sick of her cultural greed in her office. Typical dog-eat-dog place. So she decided to just do one little thing. Every morning for her coffee break, she'd go down to the Coke machine, she'd leave change in the machine, in the change machine of the machine, and she left a little note that said, "Your Coke has been paid for. Keep the spirit alive and pay it forward." This totally freaked out her office. They created a spy network, a little neighborhood watch scheme to try to find out who the secret Santa was. So then she moved floors, and she began leaving donuts every morning with the same little sign. "Donuts have been left for you. Keep the spirit alive. Pay it forward." And can you believe this? It changed the whole dinner table conversation of each and every employee for weeks. In fact, it ultimately changed the culture of the office, the entire office. She'd put a mirror up to that office. They saw themselves, and they realized this wasn't who they really were. It's that simple. It's that simple. So the bond is also about how you can become a game changer, and how these larger goals can reestablish the community around you, whether it's your extended family, your neighborhood, your office, and ultimately your town, and possibly even your country. Because it doesn't take the big guys in charge. It doesn't take big master plans. They found that even one little pay it forward activity ripples right down a social network, so that if I'm kind to John, John's more likely to be kind to Mary, Mary's more likely to be kind to Susan, and Susan's more likely to be kind to Joan, and so on. It's that viral. It doesn't take the big guys in charge. All it takes between all of us is the desire to become not a spiritual pacifist, not a spiritual person who's wedded to their own journey, but wedded to everybody's journey. It's now time for all of us to be spiritual activists. It's that important. We're the most important generation that's ever lived. It doesn't take the big guys in charge. All it takes is the simple belief that it doesn't have to be like this, not for one more day.